Welcome to SFScon Day 2. Today we will have a track called DevOps. I'm Patrick Bertolla. I will guide you through it. I'm the moderator. If you need, if you want to ask a question during the talk, do it during the talk, not at the end of the talk, because the speaker will have 15 minutes to talk. And at the end, if there's still time, we will use it to do questions. So if you're interested to ask a question, try to do it a little bit sooner so we can manage to do that for you. I will ask then the question to the single speakers, and we'll get for sure an answer. Even if he's not answering during the talk, even afterwards, you will see in the comment section that there is a lot of possibility to get in touch with other people who will talk about it. Another thing that you have to remember that there's Sankt Virtual. In Sankt Virtual, you will have the possibility to meet other people in different rooms to different topics to talk about those things. There will also be speakers there. There will also be moderators. So you will have lots of possibilities to communicate, to network. We have, for every speak, we have a 5-minute break. So you can also go to another track to see what you like, to see what you would see next. And we'll try to keep it quite easygoing. Our first speaker will be Ivan Paschenko. Ivan Paschenko, he's a PhD candidate at the University of Trento. He worked with open source tools for a long time. He has a lot of experience. He worked with Python and with Java. He developed a lot of different applications already. He will tell about dependency management, a problem that we developers all kind of have, and how it can introduce lots of security issues, not just you don't just have the dependency issue on its own, but it can introduce. There's a lot of leaks that happen because of dependency management, obviously. Sometimes the security holes can be patched easily, but sometimes it's quite difficult to find solutions ad hoc, and it can really be a big break for your application. I think do we have Ivan Paschenko already online? I guess not. We just wait for him then. Hi, Ivan. We start in a minute. Ivan, you have your microphone muted. Can you unmute your microphone?
Oh, yeah, sure.
So now we hear you. Welcome to SFScon.
Thanks for inviting me. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here.
I think we can we already start with the presentation? I think we can already start with the presentation, so you even have a little bit more time now.
Okay, thanks. So then let me start. So thanks for the introduction. Yes, I'm Ivan. I'm a postdoctoral research fellow now at the University of Trento, and today I'm going to share with you some lessons from developers. So basically, we're going to talk about how to make dependency management secure. A little bit more details about who am I. So I'm a software security researcher at the University of Trento. I got my PhD from the same university last year. And previously, I used to be an intern at SAP Security Research in France. And before, I was also lead on security engineer at Paschenko in Russia. Coming back to the topic of software dependencies, I think that nowadays projects could be represented with this beautiful picture of the iceberg. Because the own code, the part that we can see in the nowadays of the project is just the top of the iceberg. And the big part is actually hidden underwater. And this part, so this is the actual code that we cannot really see, we cannot really control all of it, is represented by dependencies of our projects. And these are the third-party components of maybe open source, maybe closed source, but still we are using them in our projects. And these components, if they contain known vulnerabilities, possess a real threat to our projects. And this threat is actually well recognized also by other projects. For example, OWASP top 10 project of most known web security risks recognizes components with known vulnerabilities as the biggest source of severe security breaches. So components with known vulnerabilities caused the biggest number of severe security breaches. The examples of such breaches could be the Equifax security breach, Panama Papers, and others. However, developers still keeping dependencies outdated. Why? And in research, different groups present controversial findings. For example, consider this paper, Deller et al. Saying that many dependencies are vulnerable, but could be easily updated. At the same time, a later study by Huan et al. Says that easy update would have broken around 50% of dependent projects. So the updates are not so easy, right? Consider the other couple of papers. So the Kula et al. Says that many Java libraries do not react on security updates of these libraries. While a later study by Paschenko et al. Suggests that 20% of discovered vulnerabilities are actually in test and development scopes. And therefore, such vulnerabilities are not exploitable. So, these controversials suggest that developers may not be entirely irrational in not always updating dependencies. And it is very important to actually understand their reasoning to improve dependency management process and make it secure. So for this, we have interviewed 25 developers coming from 25 different companies located in 9 countries. So the developers mainly use C, C++, Java, JavaScript, and Python in their daily projects. They work in large enterprises, also in small, medium enterprises. Some of them lead and contribute to free libre open source projects, and even leads some user groups. And we discussed the following aspects of the developers' practices. So we discussed a selection of new dependencies. We discussed how developers update dependencies of the existing dependencies of their projects, whether they use some automatic dependency analysis tools, and how they mitigate vulnerabilities in software dependencies when there is no fixed version available. So let's look in the observations that we found. So for library selection, we found that developers pay attention to security only if it is required and enforced by the policy of their company. Otherwise, developers mainly rely on popularity and community support of libraries. For example, they are checking such metrics like number of stars, forks, project contributors, if the library's source code is shared via GitHub. Then for the topic of updating software dependencies, Developers try to avoid updating dependencies for any reason, because they are afraid of breaking changes, and they are afraid of that the breaking change in dependency would break their project. And security motivates for updating only if vulnerabilities are severe, widely known, and adoption of the fixed dependency version does not require significant effort. Regarding the part of automation dependency management, we observed that developers do not believe sensitive tasks, for example, like dependency updates, to be performed automatically. So they perform these sensitive tasks manually. The current dependency analysis tools, if used, only facilitate the identification of vulnerabilities in the project dependencies. However, dependency tools produce many false positive and low priority alerts, and therefore many developers tend to avoid using them in their development routine. For the case of unfixed vulnerabilities, first, developers assess whether this vulnerability impacts the project. Then they might decide to wait for the fix or community workaround. While waiting, they could decide to adapt their own project. For example, a part affected by vulnerability could be disabled. So some functionality of the project could be disabled, or developers might prefer to maybe roll back to a safe version, to previous version of dependency. Some skilled developers may decide to maintain own fork of a dependency project. So they may decide to actually fix the project, create a pull request to the dependency project, and basically make this fix available with others. So our observations, based on our observations, we formulated the following future research ideas. Since developers have to spend much time on finding information about dependencies to include into their projects, they would love to have such information collected and combined in one place. And this information could be presented in the form of high-level metametrics. Such metametrics should show that library is well supported, mature, not affected by vulnerabilities, and the library itself and its dependencies should have compatible licenses. Since most of the breaking changes are introduced by functionality improvements, developers would appreciate to have functionality and security changes separated, so not mixed in the same release. Of course, this could be done by enforcing some organizational policies. However, we believe some automatic approach capable of distinguishing functionality and security changes would be of great help for library developers. And on the other hand, for many library users, an automatic classifier capable of identifying if a specific library version includes changes related to functionality or security would help to estimate the probability of a library to introduce breaking changes into their projects. Regarding the dependency analysis tools, developers reported that they want the tools to generate only relevant alerts, show the affected components of the dependent projects, so like show the part of a project that is affected by this vulnerability in software dependency, suggest a fixed version of a dependency, and if adoption of this fixed version introduces any breaking changes. In case of an absence of a fixed version, the tools could facilitate developers by accessing the dependencies, by facilitating their access to the dependency source code, so the developers could directly check it and possibly fix the issue. Otherwise, it would be also nice if these tools could facilitate finding an alternative library with similar functionalities and help developers to estimate the cost of switching to this library in this way. So for more details about our work, I invite you to contact me or refer to the full paper. Its preprint is available via the QR code presented on this slide. This research was partly supported by CyberSec for Europe project. And if you have any questions, I would be glad to discuss with them. Thank you.
Thank you, Ivan. We do have some questions. The first question is, how can a developer distinguish between a secure library and an insecure library?
Oh,
A dependency.
that's a brilliant question, and I mean, I think everyone wants to know that. I think currently what the developers tend to do, developers tend to look at some characteristics of this library. For example, they look for whether this library is popular, whether there is some community support of this library, whether whether there are some issues found in this library. And so if these issues are being fixed and closed fast. And so I think this is this is the current practice. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Another question I have myself, since I'm also a developer. Don't you think that it's sometimes easier if you use less dependencies? If you try to use not as much, but don't use too many dependencies if you don't need to. Isn't that also a way to have it a little bit more secure?
Yes, true. Yes, true. And this could be one of the ways. So basically, the less dependencies are used, the easier to control them in a way, because I mean you can maybe control them better in this way, right? Because we have too many of them, so it's just impossible to keep track of all the updates and all the changes to all of the dependencies.
Okay.
Yeah, true.
So I'm doing it the right way. Thank you, Ivan.
Yeah,
thank you for.
I think it's not always possible, right, to have a small number of dependencies, and they tend to grow with time.
Yeah. So, sometimes it's really hard to keep that on track. So we don't have any further questions, but thank you for the presentation, very interesting, and see you soon. Bye.
Thank you. Hope to see you next time in person. Bye.
Bye, Ivan. Io devo guardare più nella telecamera. So, our next speaker is Nicola Militarevich. He's a student and he's working as a developer at Digital Cube. He will talk about an open source Python framework for efficient development of web applications which need REST APIs. Nicola, can you hear me?
Hi, good morning. Can you hear me?
Welcome. Yeah, we can hear you.
Great, perfect.
You can start with your presentation.
Okay, thank you. Well, first of all, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us this early on a Saturday morning to listen to our talk. I am, as Ivan already said, I'm Nicola Militarevich. I work at Digital Cube in Belgrade as a backend developer. Our presentation topic for today is our base framework, most notably base 3, which is what we're calling the new version, a new principle in how we are developing web applications. So what is base? Base is what we call our internal open source framework for developing applications based on Tornado. It has been open source and using other open source tools and frameworks since its inception. The creation of Base came from the idea that to start a new project, we basically have to write some of the same code over and over again for each application. So Base was created to be a base for all of our projects and to have most of these functionalities out of the box and make it easy to implement into an existing project. One of the principles we also go by is to make sure that starting a new project is simple and easy for the developer, as to increase agility and allow for more time spent on working on actual implementations rather than anything else. It's one of the other principles that we also go by is to make sure that this is something that we can share with the community and just fix all the common issues that we also saw and just share these recipes for success. Due to how easy it is to set up a project and how well documented the tech stack is, it has been, in our experience, a great tool to onboard new programmers into Python, or any programmer that wanted to get into Python but doesn't have any Python experience. Since Base 3, we made sure to implement the microservice architecture as part of Base, and with that in mind, it will give us more freedom to add functionality and scale our services better. So, what does Base include to make all this happen? Well, it includes methods and recipes that are tried and tested by us to make REST APIs. You can, of course, extend it by adding your own or contributing to the code, but for us, what we are sharing are the patterns that we have found to be the most useful. I will mention later what the core tools that Base is based on, but basically the idea is to create your virtual environment, install the package, and dive right into coding. We also include decorators, which implement some of the functionality which we find is the core of the framework, and which we don't want to repeat the writing of. So the initial setup, basically. In previous versions of Base, we included a way of implementing common functionality with a tool which would add it into the application itself. But this time, using microservices, we have a command line tool which will basically add a microservice, which is sort of a template, if you will, to add a certain functionality into an application. It will basically be just like adding a pre-written microservice into your application. With microservices, we hope to have even more flexibility when it comes to what kind of projects we can use Base for. Of course, just due to the nature of microservice, we can have a better scalability on both the entire application and certain bottleneck parts of the code. So, what do we want to achieve? Making REST APIs as fast as possible with a focus on making the underlying business logic, or rather than making the tools work for us and bootstrapping everything. Not only are we making sure that the code gets reused, the setup parts are also reused, so you don't have to do those things over again. Like I said before, one of the ideas we also have is to maintain a couple of microservices written in Base, which will implement features we want to reuse, and of course share with the community so they can possibly extend them or reuse them, or however they want to, whatever they want to do with it. One of the big things we also implemented with Base 3 is to have sort of an automatic check-in when it comes to call parameters, which would be validated by an already written model. I will get into more details with examples later. Test-driven development and ease of implementing tests for our services, and a templating engine which will render dynamic HTML and return it is also one of the things that we're kind of hoping to achieve here. We have some classes written which should enable developers to easily add tests for their Base microservices and projects. These are some of the examples of what are the common microservices we want to implement and what we already have implemented, and the code you can already check out, run yourself, get into it right now immediately with those examples. The first two, clearly, you can have the links with the slides after the presentation, so you can go ahead and check them out immediately. Now, when it comes to our tech stack, what are the technologies we use in Base? We are basing our framework on Python 3 and Tornado, which we have extensively used and are accustomed to. On top of Tornado for the database interaction, we are using SQL Alchemy as our ORM. The only current database being supported is PostgreSQL, but we are planning on supporting many other types, including most relational and NoSQL databases. With SQL Alchemy and Base, we plan to use its models as types for our API handlers and reduce the amount of code needed to write some simple CRUD calls. These are some of the overview descriptions of the decorators we've implemented that are basically the base for base, which you kind of extend the tornado handler functionality. The root decorator would decorate a tornado handler class and define what routes can be reached for that handler, while as the API is the core of our base framework, which gives the method basically all the automatic input processing, model fetching, and basically all the functionality we want to implement into every single API call. And the authentication decorator, which we use to allow only authorized users and those with a certain access to access the API call. So those decorators are already implemented. You can check out the code when you check out base. Now, when it comes to handling input parameters, we pass them through either the URL itself or the request body. Base 3 will support either one of those. And with Python typing and base, we can automatically parse, check, and retrieve, if possible, the requested parameters and method models. Currently, we are supporting standard types and SQL Alchemy model classes. Now, I will show on examples in a little bit how to get models from the database automatically with as little code as possible. It basically relies on these two rules. You just have to type the parameters in the handler method with an appropriate model class. When it comes to optional parameters, you can just add a default value to the parameter to make it optional. Of course, this value can also be none, and then thereby you can just completely skip the execution of the parameter. Now, this is the example of the model as a type code that we wanted to implement. This is kind of what we base on. Basically, in the method itself, the post method, you can declare a user variable of a type models.user, and basically base will take care of all the hard work of fetching the model from the database, the one model that you've already sent, and adding it. Unpacking the model that you sent and then adding it to the database, and returning, of course, the success on being created. And in the next slide is if you want to fetch a model from the database, you would just send the ID. So basically, you type it as a model.user.id. In the API call itself, you just send an ID, and it will automatically retrieve the model with that ID and serialize it and return it back. So this is basically as simple as you can get when it comes to fetching and retrieving and adding data to the database. Now, when it comes to handling responses, we mostly return JSON as a response, but as usually we are building a REST API with base. Of course, you can return anything, just like you would with Tornado. With base, you can return anything that can be serialized, and it will be serialized for you and returned to the caller. For handling status codes and responses, if you don't specify anything and things go well, we just return a status 200. But obviously, you can customize the return status to match your needs. You can add in a HTTP status value to the return value as shown. And other than that, not returning a value or returning none will just return a status 204, which signifies no content, but will not trigger an error. We can return errors just like a regular response as well with its own response code. Another thing we do to throw errors in base is raising exceptions, which can include error message and ID message, which is a key you could use on the front end for translating, which is a pattern we have found that works the best for us. Right? Whether it's a returned error or an exception in a complex request chain where multiple microservices are communicating, these errors will cascade all the way to the intended caller and will return the error itself. So in a chain of requests, it just gets passed automatically. Now, when it comes to communicating between microservices, we have some methods which enable easy communication and integrated testing. Currently, we are using the microservice REST APIs themselves for communication, and with that, we are using asynchronous HTTP requests to create complex request chains. We are planning on implementing message brokers like RabbitMQ and different ways of communication, but right now, this is what we are supporting. It is important that microservices are designed with separation of concerns in mind as to make the framework really shine. When it comes to optimizing your base app, we recommend using async await on any blockers to avoid blocking a microservice by multiple requests. We also support multi-threading, just like Tornado does, with coroutines, so you can also just create a thread on the blocking API call. Of course, using external workers with message queues for heavy background processing is always recommended. And even more easily now with base 3, we can just create another instance of a microservice, which is a bottleneck, and just load balance basically, and that could create a really, really easy way of just making sure your microservices are never bottlenecked. One of the things that we started with when it came to base 3 was to make sure that test-driven development is one of the key concepts of using this framework. We've made sure that to write some helper classes to make your tests as seamless as possible, and basically we've given some examples as well on how to get started with testing. Services, basically the microservice pattern, you can test independently services by mocking results from other services, so the communication can be mocked entirely, or you can test these services in a single integration test. Now, for this feature, the developer will need to follow some additional rules, which we will outline and explain, but basically, rather than deploying a cluster of microservices and having to set up everything and deploying them and then integration testing like that, you can basically run a base 3 app, which is consistent of microservices in a simple monolith way. And by that, you will already have everything deployed and ready to test. This is basically how little code you have to write to get started with base, and how little code you need to have to get started with everything. So this is the bare minimum, and I think that's a great thing. You can already check this example out on the web page, and you can download this Python code and just run it immediately. This is also the snippet of code. This is how little you need to basically start your own base app. And we think that if you can basically take a look at the code after you take a look at the slides of the presentation, and you can basically copy paste this and it will run. This is a very simple Hello World app, which we basically are hosting on our website. This is also an example of how to run a base 3 app Dockerized, which is also something we're very proud of, because it's super easy to deploy a base 3 app and have your developers synced up with a Docker container of a base 3 app ready for testing and everything. When it comes to like some actual examples, we have a repository ready with an example microservice for context. This is also, we will be sharing this slide after a presentation, so you can go ahead and run this code and test it out yourself, and you can see how easy it is to get started. And if you are interested to see an example of what base 3 can do in the real world, we should let you know that the SFScon app was built using a work-in-progress version of base 3 and is powered by it. It will be made available to the public, fully open source very soon. Now, when it comes to next steps, we are writing a command line tool for project configuration, managing services, and creating a service from a pre-existing template, which we already discussed. We are adding supports for other databases, as I've already mentioned, whether it's relational or NoSQL. We're writing more common services, and we are also going to implement an automatic documentation generator. And I think, for the sake of time, I'm going to skip a couple of these slides, but you can take a look at how we've gone to the road, where we've gone to write base 3, and what it's taken us there. And I'd like to give an open call to anyone to contribute, check out base, see what it can do for you, start using it, because we are very excited about another open source project we're starting and sharing with the community what we've learned, how we've gotten to where we've gotten, and basically we want to hear feedback as well. And these are the pages of the project, whether it's the main page or the GitHub or the package itself, which you can run on your computer. And I'd like to thank everyone today for listening to us. I hope that this has somewhat intrigued you or interested you, and I hope it's been at least entertaining, if anything else. So I think I'd like to open up to if we have any questions, if we can.
Thank you, Nicola. We are out of time now. So if there are questions, I would like you to check the comment section of the talk, so you can maybe answer there. But we need to move to the next talk. Thank you in any case.
Okay, great. I'll answer any questions there. Thank you very much.
See you.
Bye. Bye-bye.
For the next talk, we will start in 5 minutes. So our next speaker is Martin Rabanza and Christian Gapp. Martin is a business consultant and Christian is a full-stack developer. Today they will show us how they made a reference implementation for the Alpine bit standard. Martin, I think you can come on the stage. You can start with your presentation if you want to. Christian, are you here? Can you hear me?
Yes, I'm here. I hope you can hear me too.
Perfect. Thank you.
Hi.
Thank you, Patrick, for the introduction. So we will talk about a free and open source reference implementation for data exchange in the tourism sector. We talk about the Open Data Hub and Alpine Bits. So let me just do this. Okay, full screen. So the agenda will be talk a bit what is Alpine Bits, what is the Open Data Hub, and then of course what we did to combine the both. And there is a free and open source software library which we developed, which can be used also by you if you need to implement Alpine Bits or access your own database and share the data with the Alpine Bits protocol. So Alpine Bits quickly is an open standard. Alpine Bits is for data exchanging in the tourism sector. It's a standard which nearly exists now for about 10 years. It's based on OTA, so Open Travel Alliance, this free XML standard which exists since several years. And everything is shared under CC by SA, so you have to name Alpine Bits and share alike, but you can use it. Everything is free, the document is free, you can use it. We have now the 10th release of Alpine Bits, so this was already released this year in October, and it's free for download on alpinebits.org. What is Alpine Bits not? It's not a database. Alpine Bits doesn't have any data, so there is nothing where you can connect to Alpine Bits itself. It's only the gremium which defines the standard and publishes the document. But the Open Data Hub has, so why not combine the both? Quickly about Alpine Bits, almost every company in South Tyrol, in this sector, and all the logic structures, in some degree, they are connected with Alpine Bits. And we are growing, or Alpine Bits is growing towards the Alps region, but Italy and the DACH realm, so Alpine Bits is spreading more and more with time to come. Maybe many more have implemented it, so if you have a business, maybe you're interested to implement it too. And the Alpine Bits Alliance is taking care that everything is published accordingly and that the Alpine Bits is growing and a standard as it is. So here is just a quick overview. We have now 26 small and medium enterprises in the group, and that's the Alpine Bits Alliance. All right, quickly, Alpine Bits has room availability to share if rooms are bookable, share room information, basic information about rooms and about the structure. We have then prices in the Alpine Bits standard in the protocol to transfer how much you're going to pay for your structure when you're lodging somewhere. Guest requests as reservations and bookings and so on, and price offers for revenue management. 2 words on the Open Data Hub. The Open Data Hub is a project by the Neue Tech Park, the Open Data Hub team. It consists of some core things, the open data, open standards, and free and open software. So all this is the Open Data Hub to make data visible, a single machine-readable interface, a documented and stable channel, updated in real time, and everything released under an open data license. So this is the Open Data Hub by the Tech Park. Here is an overview on the data in the Open Data Hub, and so if you want to know more, contact us, and we are happy to share the details with you. Quickly, this is the architecture. So getting data into the Data Hub and getting data out of the Data Hub, we have kind of connectors, and we have kind of interfaces where you can do this. And of course, combining Alpine Bits and the Open Data Hub is part of this, so Alpine Bits would be an interface for the Open Data Hub. Right, and now I give the word to Christian, which will present us the free and open source software reference implementation for the Open Data Hub based on the Alpine Bits protocol. Christian. Christian? Do you hear us? Christian, it's your turn. Do you hear us, Christian?
Okay, so thank you, Martin.
Right.
I will talk now a bit about the FOSS. Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
We have delay. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, perfect. So I will talk now a bit about the free open source. Yes. There is some lag. So I will continue. The free open source software reference implementation. So how did it start? It started in 2018. by Neu. They wanted to add Alphabet support to the Open Data Hub. And the main ideas were to provide Open Data Hub access through a standardized Alphabet's interface, to advance the FOSS community with open source spirit and commitment, and to evolve the Alphabet standard itself through qualified feedback. So I'm waiting until the next slide comes on. Now to the requirements. The requirements were adjusted over time. So most of you that work in other projects know that requirements may change over time. So, but those are the ones that are still in effect today. The implementation is done in Java 1.a. There is compatibility, or there needs to be compatibility with Java Servlet 3.1. We used Open Data Hub for the persistence layer. There was also the requirement to reuse as much as possible of the code, and everything should be open source. Now, to the base architecture. So we implemented everything as with the middleware pattern. The middleware pattern, you may know it already from Node.js Express framework, or from Koa, or also from Java Servlet filters. So this is nothing new. The middleware provides encapsulated functionality. So you really only implement the stuff that you need inside one middleware, and you implement the other things in other middleware. So you have clear separation of what should be done in a middleware. And the middlewares enable also easy composition. So you can take one middleware out and replace it with another, or you can stack it in a different way. So it's really you can put it however you want, the middleware. So you are really free to do what you want. Now, our implementation strategy. There was the requirement to reuse as much code as possible. So we needed to have separation of concerns. What we did was we implemented a reusable library part and a server-specific part that is, in our case, integrated with the Open Data Hub. So the library should be reusable, as I told already. And when, for example, other people want to use the library, they get a lot already out of the library, and they don't have to care about some low-level stuff. So they can focus on building the business value of the product. And again, the server part that we implemented, it uses the library. It implements the communication with the Open Data Hub, and it is Open Data Hub specific, so it is most probably not reusable, but nevertheless, if you're interested, it's also open source, and you can take a look at it. Now to the library itself. So the library provides the building blocks for an Alpine Bit server. The goal was to make it reusable and to make it simple for us and also for others to implement Alpine Bit's interface. So, as I told already, we choose the middleware pattern for flexibility, loose coupling, and composability. The library provides the common functionality that is needed in Alpine Bits. So it's a bit the boring stuff. It's the request processing, the routing, XML handling and validation, and also some other enhanced validation, which is the stuff that cannot be validated with XSD or RNG. So Alpine Bits has some rules that need to be validated manually or for a program. The library provides utilities to configure, build, and invoke the middlewares. So also this is covered, not only the middlewares, but also how you build such middleware environments. And the library provides also a Java servlet integration as an entry point to a server. You don't have to use it, you can use it. Now, some use cases. The first use case that I want to present is the Open Data Hub integration. So this was the starting point for a whole project. Yeah, we implemented this through the library and with the Open Data Hub specific part. It supports Alpine Bits versions 2017-10, 2018-10, and 2020-10 for inventory and free rooms actions only, because there was no other use case in the Open Data Hub. The Open Data Hub provides the data for inventory and free rooms, and yeah, so we implemented just those two actions. This use case, the Open Data Hub integration, is an example on how the library can be used to integrate arbitrary endpoints with small effort. So this is nice to take a look at. The Open Data Hub integration is already in production, so Open Data Hub now speaks Alpine Bit. Through the implementation, we gained a deeper understanding on how Alpine Bits works. And so during this way of implementation, we also found some small bugs. We reported them and they were fixed. Another use case is testing. So testing is very important. And the library, since it is composable, extendable, and lightweight, so it's tiny and small, because the middleware architecture provides a lot of flexibility and also abstraction as needed, the library is a very good base for testing. If you have to test anything regarding Alpine Bits, so give it a try. It's very easy to build a simple server for testing purposes. For example, if you want to do unit tests or integration tests, then it's a good choice. It's also very easy to implement a full-blown server. So if you, for example, implement a client and you want to do bigger tests in your environment, for example, then you can also use it for end-to-end tests. Just as a side note, the library itself has code coverage of about 90% in unit tests and also integration tests where it makes sense. Now to our last use case for development work. So the library is a very good starting point to get familiar with Alpine Bits and its concepts. So if you are interested in working with Alpine Bits, take a look at the library so you can find there how Alpine Bits is supposed to work. The library itself also provides some simple examples on how to build a server, and it should get your first server, up and running in a matter of minutes. The library itself has only a few dependencies. It's Java 1.8, it's Maven, and Servlet Container 3.1. If you want to use Java servlets, you don't have to use Java servlets because most of the library should also work if you provide Java input and output streams, but yeah, you can.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we came to an end. This is a summary. Get in touch with us if you need to know more, if you want to know more about this.
Thank you, Christian. Thank you, Martin. I hope we see you next year again.
We too.
So welcome back. Our next speaker is Ricardo Malioketi. He is a software developer which contributed to multiple open source projects already. He will tell us today how he's doing spell checking with WebAssembly and with Rust. Ricardo, can you hear me?
Yes.
How are you doing? Are you doing good?
Yeah, thank you. Good, thanks.
So I think you can start with your presentation.
Okay, thank you. So, good morning, everyone. My name is Ricardo Malioketi. Sorry, don't have focus. Sorry. So, who am I? I work as a software developer for medical labs and also as a freelancer. I'm also one of the organizers of Torino Night, which is a meetup about free software we do in Torino. So, today I'd like to talk about how it's possible to use Rust and WebAssembly in a web application and why it may be a good idea to do so. So, the agenda for today is what is WebAssembly, what is Rust, and a real-world use case. Sorry. So, what is WebAssembly? WebAssembly is a portable binary format developed as a compilation target. And let's see what this means. So, portable means that WebAssembly code is independent of the platform it is running. Sorry. So, independent of the platform it is running, independent of the CPU architecture, independent from the operating system, and so on. Then developed as a compilation target, means that we are not going to write WebAssembly directly. Instead, a compiler will compile our code to WebAssembly. Well, if you really want to write code directly in WebAssembly, there's a text version of WebAssembly, and you may find it in technical articles. WebAssembly is quite a recent specification. Version 1.0 is from late 2019. It's in a working state, but some features have not been implemented in all browsers or runtimes. For example, begin JavaScript integration with 60-bit for WebAssembly integer is not supported in WebKit, and WASM is just a WebAssembly abbreviation. SIMD, the vectorized instruction, which are useful for multimedia, 3D, and machine learning problems, are disabled by default and hidden behind the flag. And then threads and atomic operations, but permits to share a buffer of memory between web workers, still are not supported by WebKit. WASI, which is a specification for defining the interface with operating systems, think like the C standard library for WebAssembly, while experimental, is available in some runtimes. To stay up to date, you can follow the roadmap on the official website. So, which are the main features of WebAssembly? WebAssembly is fast. It's faster than JavaScript. It's slower than native code by some factors. The number of factors depends on what you need to do. It's also smaller in size and faster to parse than JavaScript. WebAssembly is secure. Code runs in a sandbox and does not have access to system resources. So you might explicitly grant access to some resources using WASI. It's compute only. It does not replace JavaScript. On the browser, for example, you need to use the JavaScript API for the HTTP calls, and also to have an output. For example, if you want to write to the DOM or use the Canvas or WebGL. How can I run my WebAssembly code? Well, WebAssembly is supported by all the major browsers, and it's available to 93% of users according to canause.com. It is supported by some JavaScript runtimes like Node.js and Dino, and it is supported by some WebAssembly specific runtimes like OneTime and Wasm. And in which languages may you write code to be compiled to WebAssembly? Well, you can compile C, C++ with Scriptem, which is a project that offers a toolchain, tooling, and API implementation. For example, they provide the OpenGL, SDL, pthreads, and the POSIX implementation for the web. Then there's Rust, which used to have a specific working group, now defunct. Still, it has good documentation and tooling. Then there's AssemblyScript, which is derived from TypeScript. So probably it's the easiest way to program or be introduced to WebAssembly for a JavaScript developer. Then there's C#, there's Blazor, which is a part to WebAssembly of a .NET runtime. So you can write your front-end and back-end code in a cell language supported by a .NET runtime. There are other languages that implements WebAssembly as a target, like Go and Swift, and both are experimental. So why WebAssembly is interesting? Well, first, because it makes porting application to the web feasible. Some examples are 3D games, database like SQLite, or even Pyodide, which is a big chunk of the Python data stack compiled to the web. And then since Webassembly makes it possible to use code written in other languages, in JavaScript, we can use the same code both on the front end and in the back end. And by having a fast and safe runtime, we can move more computation on the front end. And finally, we can use the very same runtime for multiple languages. Say, you want to run third-party code, you can use WASM runtime and let people write code in their preferred language that compiles to WebAssembly, of course. And so they just have to provide a WASM binary. And that's all for the WebAssembly part of the talk. So let's take a quick look at Rust. Rust is a programming language which is fast as C, C++, but with more guarantees. It's reliable. Its memory ownership handling avoids some kind of memory safety bugs like double free, user free, null pointer dereferences. It also helps with some concurrency issues, and some problems are even reported at compile time. It has a rich ecosystem. It has good documentation, a package manager called Cargo, and good integration with IDEs and editors. And what can I do with Rust? Well, systems programming is, of course, a good fit, and you can use Rust to write servers or CLI application. Then there's embedded programming, because it's possible to compile Rust without a runtime. And well, we can use it to complement other languages. Say, with Cargo C, you export C-compatible libraries. You can write Python modules with PyO3. And of course, you can compile Rust to WebAssembly. So please note that these are just examples. Of course, you can write a lot more stuff in Rust. So how one can learn Rust? But first, there's an official book, which is available both online and on paper. And then in Italy, we have a few meetups. And of course, there are meetups abroad too. So time for the last part of the talk. Let's see a real-world use case. So the requirement was to implement a spike correction service for web application. First option we tried was to implement the feature on the backend and export as an API. And we used the Python implementation of SimSpell, which is a spelling correction algorithm. Problem is that spelling correction is a CPU-bound application. And so a slow language like Python is not great for that. And on top of that, we need to take into account the network latency. So we thought of moving the computation to the front end, and we looked for a SimSpell implementation in JavaScript. Unfortunately, there weren't any up-to-date SimSpell implementation available. So there was a Rust SimSpell implementation, and on our team there is a Rust programmer. And so the Rust implementation required some work, and we contributed quite a bit of code. So we contributed to the Rust SimSpell implementation an optimized WebAssembly part, which is suitable in size for the web. We added some features like word segmentation, and we updated the SimSpell algorithm to version 6.5. For the full technical details, check out Nicola Martino talk at Rust Lab 2020, and I think the videos will be out in a month or so. So that's all from me. Thanks for listening, and if you have any question, I'm here to answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Ricardo. We do have a question. What does compute only mean exactly? There's no GUI component to draw HTML elements or to write to a canvas. Is there no?
It means that WebAssembly implements a simplified machine, so it just does computation. And if you want to have like an output like the Canvas WebGL, you have to use on the browser, of course, you have to use the browser implementation, so the JavaScript API. So you export your function that does something in WebAssembly, but to write to the Canvas WebGL, you have to use JavaScript.
Okay.
So, for example, you get the binary data to write to the Canvas in WebAssembly, but you have to write to the Canvas with JavaScript.
There's somebody else who writes, I do not know if I have understood it correctly. There are no bindings from WebAssembly to other languages, but functionality that needs to be ported to WebAssembly directly.
Well, you can use, let's make an example. So, for example, both WasTime and WASM, which have the two runtimes that I've shown before, have modules to be imported from language runtimes. For example, there is a Python module which I can load. I can initialize the WasTime or WasMer virtual machine and load WebAssembly code. So I can run WebAssembly code from my Python application if I want. Or on the other hand, I can use a specific runtime or just use the browser or whatever you like. So you have many options.
Thank you, Ricardo. I think if there are clarifications to make, you can use the comment section. But thank you for your talk, and I hope we will see you soon.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.
Have a nice day. Bye. Thank you.
So, our next talk will be at 11:20. In the meantime, go to track 5. You can join the discussion round and about, it should be legal issues. I don't really know. Okay, thank you.
Hey, I'm Davide. I'm the director of the Open Source Technology Center here at Huawei. The Open Source Technology Center is a pan-European strategic technological hub that leverages open source talent and expertise across multiple locations, including Milan, Warsaw, Helsinki, Munich, Moscow, St. Petersburg, Cork, and many more to come. Our charter is to drive open source innovation via technical and business collaboration. Open Harmony is our first big project. The idea is to create an open ecosystem of consumer device makers and build together a new cooperative and distributed operating system that has as a priority the end consumer and their rights to take back control of their privacy, security, usability, and convenience of choice. SFScon is not just an event for us. It's the symbol of the strong collaboration with Neutech Park and the Free Software Foundation Europe. Together, we want to drive the message that focusing from the early phases of an open source project on IP compliance, governance, and transparency not only is cool, but it is also the right thing to do to mitigate business risks. Many companies are approaching open source technology to leverage the vast opportunities that it sets aside, often forgetting, though, to prioritize their actions on compliance and IP protection issues. Our starting point with Open Harmony is obviously being related to achieve a modern FOSS policy. We want to provide Open Harmony and the Open Source Technology Center with a DevOps infrastructure able to implement an open source continuous license compliance. Open source technology and open governance are the beating heart of Open Harmony. We truly believe that any project that is destined to live long must be built together in an open, accessible, and transparent way. Understanding market requests, requirements, and project needs is key. And that's why Huawei decided to establish the Open Source Technology Center in Europe and tap into the European open source talents and expertise pool. At Huawei, we believe that transparency, openness, and trust are key enablers to reach and build a strong and trusted ecosystem of developers, integrators, companies, and all the other stakeholders involved. Open Harmony is a journey that has just begun, and we want to make it together.
We are Telmicom, a tech company based in South Tyrol. Our focus is on telecommunications and networking. We offer the right solution for every type of connection, from internet to cloud systems, mobile and landline. For us, SFScon is the most important event for open source. We have been always part of it, so we couldn't miss it this year either. It is the right place to make innovation happen. Innovation is also one of our guiding stars. Thinking outside of the box creates innovation. Therefore, I'm convinced that we all need ideas from young people, and if we manage to combine young ideas with open source, we can create something new and unexpected. So free software is the real key to innovation. I love to link it to another saying, public money, public code. When we keep that in mind, we can achieve real breakthroughs in the fields of innovation and technology.
Good day, everyone. I'm Leslie Hawthorne from the Office of the CTO in the Open Source Program Office at Red Hat. Red Hat is a global company specializing in creating a full-stack open source software solution set. We provide everything from the operating system in Red Hat Enterprise Linux to software for containerized application development through our OpenShift product line. We build our business around support subscriptions and consulting services. Red Hat has been a proud participant in SFScon previously, and we are very excited to be back this year to support this vibrant community in Bolzano and beyond. Red Hat focuses on preserving customer choice and supporting open innovation by providing open source hybrid cloud solutions. But it's not just about our software stack. We believe that open source development methodologies and an open organizational approach to our work creates better software, higher performing teams, and more empowered employees. As companies across the globe work towards digital transformation, we are there to support them with both our products and our expertise as a technology partner that has been working the open source way since day one of our company. Red Hat knows that upstream first open source collaboration and co-creation are the best ways to build software. For me personally, it's the strength of the communities that come together to build free and open source software that has kept me invested in the space for the past 15 plus years. I've seen the power of open source to solve some of the world's greatest technical challenges, and I am particularly excited to see what the principles of collaboration, co-creation, and transparencies in open source communities can do to help everyone in the world who is approaching problem solving now in order to improve life and make things better for everyone. Thank you so much, and I hope you all have a wonderful time at SFScon.
Hi there, I'm Andrea Cima and I'm the CEO of Made in Cima, a web agency based in Trento, Italy. We are a young company made up of young people really passionate about user experience. We have overall more than 15-year experience in prototyping, designing and developing stunning and highly usable websites and web applications. We also create effective digital strategies which involve online communication, web marketing, social media, SEO, usability testing and more. We've been involved in SFScon since 2013, when we first designed and built the SFScon website. We've always worked with open source technologies and free software, so we were really thrilled when we got the chance to work on the SFScon project. Since then, we've kept working on it, improving it to make your online experience better and better every year. And of course, as we strongly believe in free software, we are also sponsor of this beautiful and important event. Going back to Made in Cima, the agency stands out in particular for its sartorial approach and the user-centered design methodology. We design every strategy, website, interface tailored to the marketing and communication goals and to the final users. Just to give you an example, we don't ever use ready-to-use themes for websites. We do our own. That means no constraints whatsoever to creativity or technical solutions. Instead, it means high quality and custom open source products. We've decided to support SFScon because we really believe that free software, with its large and super active community, is the only way to keep creating better digital products and make the internet a better place. We wish all the best to the outstanding speakers and participants of this edition. Get in touch on madeincima.com. We can't wait to hear about your project, based on free software, of course.
Hey, I'm Davide. I'm the director of the Open Source Technology Center here at Huawei. The Open Source Technology Center is a pan-European strategic technological hub that leverages open source talent and expertise across multiple locations, including Milan, Warsaw, Helsinki, Munich, Moscow, St. Petersburg, Cork, and many more to come. Our charter is to drive open source innovation via technical and business collaboration. Open Harmony is our first big project. The idea is to create an open ecosystem of consumer device makers and build together a new cooperative and distributed operating system that has as a priority the end consumer and their rights to take back control of their privacy, security, usability, and convenience of choice. SFScon is not just an event for us. It's the symbol of the strong collaboration with Neutech Park and the Free Software Foundation Europe. Together, we want to drive the message that focusing from the early phases of an open source project on IP compliance, governance, and transparency not only is cool, but it is also the right thing to do to mitigate business risks. Many companies are approaching open source technology to leverage the vast opportunities that it sets aside, often forgetting, though, to prioritize their actions on compliance and IP protection issues. Our starting point with Open Harmony is obviously being related to achieve a modern FOSS policy. We want to provide Open Harmony and the Open Source Technology Center with a DevOps infrastructure able to implement an open source continuous license compliance. Open source technology and open governance are the beating heart of Open Harmony. We truly believe that any project that is destined to live long must be built together in an open, accessible, and transparent way. Understanding market requests, requirements, and project needs is key. And that's why Huawei decided to establish the Open Source Technology Center in Europe and tap into the European open source talents and expertise pool. At Huawei, we believe that transparency, openness, and trust are key enablers to reach and build a strong and trusted ecosystem of developers, integrators, companies, and all the other stakeholders involved. Open Harmony is a journey that has just begun, and we want to make it together.
We are Telmecom, a tech company based in South Tyrol. Our focus is on telecommunications and networking. We offer the right solution for every type of connection, from internet to cloud systems, mobile and landline. For us, SFScon is the most important event for open source. We have been always part of it, so we couldn't miss it this year either. It is the right place to make innovation happen. Innovation is also one of our guiding stars. Thinking outside of the box creates innovation. Therefore, I'm convinced that we all need ideas from young people, and if we manage to combine young ideas with open source, we can create something new and unexpected. So free software is the real key to innovation. I love to link it to another saying, public money, public code. When we keep that in mind, we can achieve real breakthroughs in the fields of innovation and technology.
Good day, everyone. I'm Leslie Hawthorne from the Office of the CTO in the Open Source Program Office at Red Hat. Red Hat is a global company specializing in creating a full-stack open source software solution set. We provide everything from the operating system in Red Hat Enterprise Linux to software for containerized application development through our OpenShift product line. We build our business around support subscriptions and consulting services. Red Hat has been a proud participant in SFScon previously, and we are very excited to be back this year to support this vibrant community in Bolzano and beyond. Red Hat focuses on preserving customer choice and supporting open innovation by providing open source hybrid cloud solutions. But it's not just about our software stack. We believe that open source development methodologies and an open organizational approach to our work creates better software, higher performing teams, and more empowered employees. As companies across the globe work towards digital transformation, we are there to support them with both our products and our expertise as a technology partner that has been working the open source way since day one of our company. Red Hat knows that upstream first open source collaboration and co-creation are the best ways to build software. For me personally, it's the strength of the communities that come together to build free and open source software that has kept me invested in the space for the past 15 plus years. I've seen the power of open source to solve some of the world's greatest technical challenges, and I am particularly excited to see what the principles of collaboration, co-creation, and transparencies in open source communities can do to help everyone in the world who is approaching problem solving now in order to improve life and make things better for everyone. Thank you so much, and I hope you all have a wonderful time at SFScon.
Hi there, I'm Andrea Cima, and I'm the CEO of Made in Cima, a web agency based in Trento, Italy. We are a young company made up of young people really passionate about user experience. We have overall more than 15-year experience in prototyping, designing, and developing stunning and highly usable websites and web applications. We also create effective digital strategies, which involve online communication, web marketing, social media, SEO, usability testing, and more. We've been involved in SFScon since 2013, when we first designed and built the SFScon website. We've always worked with open source technologies and free software, so we were really thrilled when we got the chance to work on the SFScon project. Since then, we've kept working on it, improving it, to make your online experience better and better every year. And of course, as we strongly believe in free software, we are also sponsor of this beautiful and important event. Going back to Made in Cima, the agency stands out in particular for its sartorial approach and the user-centered design methodology. We design every strategy, website, interface tailored to the marketing and communication goals and to the final users. Just to give you an example, we don't ever use ready-to-use themes for websites. We do our own. That means no constraints whatsoever to creativity or technical solutions. Instead, it means high quality and custom open source products. We've decided to support SFScon because we really believe that free software, with its large and super active community, is the only way to keep creating better digital products and make the internet a better place. We wish all the best to the outstanding speakers and participants of this edition. Get in touch on madeincima.com. We can't wait to hear about your project, based on free software, of course.
Hey, I'm Davide. I'm the director of the Open Source Technology Center here at Huawei. The Open Source Technology Center is a pan-European strategic technological hub that leverages open source talent and expertise across multiple locations, including Milan, Warsaw, Helsinki, Munich, Moscow, St. Petersburg, Cork, and many more to come. Our charter is to drive open source innovation via technical and business collaboration. Open Harmony is our first big project. The idea is to create an open ecosystem of consumer device makers and build together a new cooperative and distributed operating system that has as a priority the end consumer and their rights to take back control of their privacy, security, usability, and convenience of choice. SFScon is not just an event for us. It's the symbol of the strong collaboration with Neue Tech Park and the Free Software Foundation Europe. Together, we want to drive the message that focusing from the early phases of an open source project on IP compliance, governance, and transparency not only is cool, but it is also the right thing to do to mitigate business risks. Many companies are approaching open source technology to leverage the vast opportunities that it sets aside, often forgetting, though, to prioritize their actions on compliance and IP protection issues. Our starting point with Open Harmony is obviously being related to achieve a modern FOSS policy. We want to provide Open Harmony and the Open Source Technology Center with a DevOps infrastructure able to implement an open source continuous license compliance. Open source technology and open governance are the beating heart of Open Harmony. We truly believe that any project that is destined to live long must be built together in an open, accessible, and transparent way. Understanding market requests, requirements, and project needs is key. And that's why Huawei decided to establish the Open Source Technology Center in Europe and tap into the European open source talents and expertise pool. At Huawei, we believe that transparency, openness, and trust are key enablers to reach and build a strong and trusted ecosystem of developers, integrators, companies, and all the other stakeholders involved. Open Harmony is a journey that has just begun, and we want to make it together.
We are Telmecom, a tech company based in South Tyrol. Our focus is on telecommunications and networking. We offer the right solution for every type of connection, from internet to cloud systems, mobile and landline. For us, SFScon is the most important event for open source. We have been always part of it, so we couldn't miss it this year either. It is the right place to make innovation happen. Innovation is also one of our guiding stars. Thinking outside of the box creates innovation. Therefore, I'm convinced that we all need ideas from young people, and if we manage to combine young ideas with open source, we can create something new and unexpected. So free software is the real key to innovation. I love to link it to another saying, public money, public code. When we keep that in mind, we can achieve real breakthroughs in the fields of innovation and technology.
Good day, everyone. I'm Leslie Hawthorne from the Office of the CTO in the Open Source Program Office at Red Hat. Red Hat is a global company specializing in creating a full stack open source software solution set. We provide everything from the operating system in Red Hat Enterprise Linux to software for containerized application development through our OpenShift product line. We build our business around support subscriptions and consulting services. Red Hat has been a proud participant in SFScon previously, and we are very excited to be back this year to support this vibrant community in Bolzano and beyond. Red Hat focuses on preserving customer choice and supporting open innovation by providing open source hybrid cloud solutions. But it's not just about our software stack. We believe that open source development methodologies and an open organizational approach to our work creates better software, higher performing teams, and more empowered employees. As companies across the globe work towards digital transformation, we are there to support them with both our products and our expertise as a technology partner that has been working the open source way since day one of our company. Red Hat knows that upstream first open source collaboration and co-creation are the best ways to build software. For me personally, it's the strength of the communities that come together to build free and open source software that has kept me invested in the space for the past 15 plus years. I've seen the power of open source to solve some of the world's greatest technical challenges, and I am particularly excited to see what the principles of collaboration, co-creation, and transparencies in open source communities can do to help everyone in the world who is approaching problem solving now in order to improve life and make things better for everyone. Thank you so much, and I hope you all have a wonderful time at SFScon.
Hi there, I'm Andrea Cima, and I'm the CEO of Made in Cima, a web agency based in Trento, Italy. We are a young company made up of young people really passionate about user experience. We have overall more than 15-year experience in prototyping, designing, and developing stunning and highly usable websites and web applications. We also create effective digital strategies, which involve online communication, web marketing, social media, SEO, usability testing, and more. We've been involved in SFScon since 2013, when we first designed and built the SFScon website. We've always worked with open source technologies and free software, so we were really thrilled when we got the chance to work on the SFScon project. Since then, we've kept working on it, improving it, to make your online experience better and better every year. And of course, as we strongly believe in free software, we are also sponsor of this beautiful and important event. Going back to Made in Cima, the agency stands out in particular for its sartorial approach and the user-centered design methodology. We design every strategy, website, interface tailored to the marketing and communication goals and to the final users. Just to give you an example, we don't ever use ready-to-use themes for websites. We do our own. That means no constraints whatsoever to creativity or technical solutions. Instead, it means high quality and custom open source products. We've decided to support SFScon because we really believe that free software, with its large and super active community, is the only way to keep creating better digital products and make the internet a better place. We wish all the best to the outstanding speakers and participants of this edition. Get in touch on madeincima.com. We can't wait to hear about your project, based on free software, of course.
Hey, I'm Davide. I'm the director of the Open Source Technology Center here at Huawei. The Open Source Technology Center is a pan-European strategic technological hub that leverages open source talent and expertise across multiple locations, including Milan, Warsaw, Helsinki, Munich, Moscow, St. Petersburg, Cork, and many more to come. Our charter is to drive open source innovation via technical and business collaboration. Open Harmony is our first big project. The idea is to create an open ecosystem of consumer device makers and build together a new cooperative and distributed operating system that has as a priority the end consumer and their rights to take back control of their privacy, security, usability, and convenience of choice. SFScon is not just an event for us. It's the symbol of the strong collaboration with Neutech Park and the Free Software Foundation Europe. Together, we want to drive the message that focusing from the early phases of an open source project on IP compliance, governance, and transparency not only is cool, but it is also the right thing to do to mitigate business risks. Many companies are approaching open source technology to leverage the vast opportunities that it sets aside, often forgetting, though, to prioritize their actions on compliance and IP protection issues. Our starting point with Open Harmony is obviously being related to achieve a modern FOSS policy. We want to provide Open Harmony and the Open Source Technology Center with a DevOps infrastructure able to implement an open source continuous license compliance. Open source technology and open governance are the beating heart of Open Harmony. We truly believe that any project that is destined to live long must be built together in an open, accessible, and transparent way. Understanding market requests, requirements, and project needs is key. And that's why Huawei decided to establish the Open Source Technology Center in Europe and tap into the European open source talents and expertise pool. At Huawei, we believe that transparency, openness, and trust are key enablers to reach and build a strong and trusted ecosystem of developers, integrators, companies, and all the other stakeholders involved. Open Harmony is a journey that has just begun, and we want to make it together.
We are Telmecom, a tech company based in South Tyrol. Our focus is on telecommunications and networking. We offer the right solution for every type of connection, from internet to cloud systems, mobile and landline. For us, SFScon is the most important event for open source. We have been always part of it, so we couldn't miss it this year either. It is the right place to make innovation happen. Innovation is also one of our guiding stars. Thinking outside of the box creates innovation. Therefore, I'm convinced that we all need ideas from young people, and if we manage to combine young ideas with open source, we can create something new and unexpected. So free software is the real key to innovation. I love to link it to another saying, public money, public code. When we keep that in mind, we can achieve real breakthroughs in the fields of innovation and technology.
Good day, everyone. I'm Leslie Hawthorne from the Office of the CTO in the Open Source Program Office at Red Hat. Red Hat is a global company specializing in creating a full-stack open source software solution set. We provide everything from the operating system in Red Hat Enterprise Linux to software for containerized application development through our OpenShift product line. We build our business around support subscriptions and consulting services. Red Hat has been a proud participant in SFScon previously, and we are very excited to be back this year to support this vibrant community in Bolzano and beyond. Red Hat focuses on preserving customer choice and supporting open innovation by providing open source hybrid cloud solutions. But it's not just about our software stack. We believe that open source development methodologies and an open organizational approach to our work creates better software, higher performing teams, and more empowered employees. As companies across the globe work towards digital transformation, we are there to support them with both our products and our expertise as a technology partner that has been working the open source way since day one of our company. Red Hat knows that upstream first open source collaboration and co-creation are the best ways to build software. For me personally, it's the strength of the communities that come together to build free and open source software that has kept me invested in the space for the past 15 plus years. I've seen the power of open source to solve some of the world's greatest technical challenges, and I am particularly excited to see what the principles of collaboration, co-creation, and transparencies in open source communities can do to help everyone in the world who is approaching problem solving now in order to improve life and make things better for everyone. Thank you so much, and I hope you all have a wonderful time at SFScon.
Hi there, I'm Andrea Cima, and I'm the CEO of Made in Cima, a web agency based in Trento, Italy. We are a young company made up of young people really passionate about user experience. We have overall more than 15-year experience in prototyping, designing, and developing stunning and highly usable websites and web applications. We also create effective digital strategies, which involve online communication, web marketing, social media, SEO, usability testing, and more. We've been involved in SFScon since 2013, when we first designed and built the SFScon website. We've always worked with open source technologies and free software, so we were really thrilled when we got the chance to work on the SFScon project. Since then, we've kept working on it, improving it, to make your online experience better and better every year. And of course, as we strongly believe in free software, we are also sponsor of this beautiful and important event. Going back to Made in Cima, the agency stands out in particular for its sartorial approach and the user-centered design methodology. We design every strategy, website, interface tailored to the marketing and communication goals and to the final users. Just to give you an example, we don't ever use ready-to-use themes for websites. We do our own. That means no constraints whatsoever to creativity or technical solutions. Instead, it means high quality and custom open source products. We've decided to support SFScon because we really believe that free software, with its large and super active community, is the only way to keep creating better digital products and make the internet a better place. We wish all the best to the outstanding speakers and participants of this edition. Get in touch on madeincima.com. We can't wait to hear about your project, based on free software, of course.
Hey, I'm Davide. I'm the director of the Open Source Technology Center here at Huawei. The Open Source Technology Center is a pan-European strategic technological hub that leverages open source talent and expertise across multiple locations, including Milan, Warsaw, Helsinki, Munich, Moscow, St. Petersburg, Cork, and many more to come. Our charter is to drive open source innovation via technical and business collaboration. Open Harmony is our first big project. The idea is to create an open ecosystem of consumer device makers and build together a new cooperative and distributed operating system that has as a priority the end consumer and their rights to take back control of their privacy, security, usability, and convenience of choice. SFScon is not just an event for us. It's the symbol of the strong collaboration with Neutech Park and the Free Software Foundation Europe. Together, we want to drive the message that focusing from the early phases of an open source project on IP compliance, governance, and transparency not only is cool, but it is also the right thing to do to mitigate business risks. Many companies are approaching open source technology to leverage the vast opportunities that it sets aside, often forgetting, though, to prioritize their actions on compliance and IP protection issues. Our starting point with Open Harmony is obviously being related to achieve a modern FOSS policy. We want to provide Open Harmony and the Open Source Technology Center with a DevOps infrastructure able to implement an open source continuous license compliance. Open source technology and open governance are the beating heart of Open Harmony. We truly believe that any project that is destined to live long must be built together in an open, accessible, and transparent way. Understanding market requests, requirements, and project needs is key. And that's why Huawei decided to establish the Open Source Technology Center in Europe and tap into the European open source talents and expertise pool. At Huawei, we believe that transparency, openness, and trust are key enablers to reach and build a strong and trusted ecosystem of developers, integrators, companies, and all the other stakeholders involved. Open Harmony is a journey that has just begun, and we want to make it together.
We are Telmecom, a tech company based in South Tyrol. Our focus is on telecommunications and networking. We offer the right solution for every type of connection, from internet to cloud systems, mobile and landline. For us, SFScon is the most important event for open source. We have been always part of it, so we couldn't miss it this year either. It is the right place to make innovation happen. Innovation is also one of our guiding stars. Thinking outside of the box creates innovation. Therefore, I'm convinced that we all need ideas from young people, and if we manage to combine young ideas with open source, we can create something new and unexpected. So free software is the real key to innovation. I love to link it to another saying, public money, public code. When we keep that in mind, we can achieve real breakthroughs in the fields of innovation and technology.
Good day, everyone. I'm Leslie Hawthorne from the Office of the CTO in the Open Source Program Office at Red Hat. Red Hat is a global company specializing in creating a full-stack open source software solution set. We provide everything from the operating system in Red Hat Enterprise Linux to software for containerized application development through our OpenShift product line. We build our business around support subscriptions and consulting services. Red Hat has been a proud participant in SFScon previously, and we are very excited to be back this year to support this vibrant community in Bolzano and beyond. Red Hat focuses on preserving customer choice and supporting open innovation by providing open source hybrid cloud solutions. But it's not just about our software stack. We believe that open source development methodologies and an open organizational approach to our work creates better software, higher performing teams, and more empowered employees. As companies across the globe work towards digital transformation, we are there to support them with both our products and our expertise as a technology partner that has been working the open source way since day one of our company. Red Hat knows that upstream first open source collaboration and co-creation are the best ways to build software. For me personally, it's the strength of the communities that come together to build free and open source software that has kept me invested in the space for the past 15 plus years. I've seen the power of open source to solve some of the world's greatest technical challenges, and I am particularly excited to see what the principles of collaboration, co-creation, and transparencies in open source communities can do to help everyone in the world who is approaching problem solving now in order to improve life and make things better for everyone. Thank you so much, and I hope you all have a wonderful time at SFScon.
Hi there, I'm Andrea Cima, and I'm the CEO of Made in Cima, a web agency based in Trento, Italy. We are a young company made up of young people really passionate about user experience. We have overall more than 15-year experience in prototyping, designing, and developing stunning and highly usable websites and web applications. We also create effective digital strategies, which involve online communication, web marketing, social media, SEO, usability testing, and more. We've been involved in SFScon since 2013, when we first designed and built the SFScon website. We've always worked with open source technologies and free software, so we were really thrilled when we got the chance to work on the SFScon project. Since then, we've kept working on it, improving it, to make your online experience better and better every year. And of course, as we strongly believe in free software, we are also sponsor of this beautiful and important event. Going back to Made in Cima, the agency stands out in particular for its sartorial approach and the user-centered design methodology. We design every strategy, website, interface tailored to the marketing and communication goals and to the final users. Just to give you an example, we don't ever use ready-to-use themes for websites. We do our own. That means no constraints whatsoever to creativity or technical solutions. Instead, it means high quality and custom open source products. We've decided to support SFScon because we really believe that free software, with its large and super active community, is the only way to keep creating better digital products and make the internet a better place. We wish all the best to the outstanding speakers and participants of this edition. Get in touch on madeincima.com. We can't wait to hear about your project, based on free software, of course.
Hey, I'm Davide. I'm the director of the Open Source Technology Center here at Huawei. The Open Source Technology Center is a pan-European strategic technological hub that leverages open source talent and expertise across multiple locations, including Milan, Warsaw, Helsinki, Munich, Moscow, St. Petersburg, Cork, and many more to come. Our charter is to drive open source innovation via technical and business collaboration. Open Harmony is our first big project. The idea is to create an open ecosystem of consumer device makers and build together a new cooperative and distributed operating system that has as a priority the end consumer and their rights to take back control of their privacy, security, usability, and convenience of choice. SFScon is not just an event for us. It's the symbol of the strong collaboration with Neutech Park and the Free Software Foundation Europe. Together, we want to drive the message that focusing from the early phases of an open source project on IP compliance, governance, and transparency not only is cool, but it is also the right thing to do to mitigate business risks. Many companies are approaching open source technology to leverage the vast opportunities that it sets aside, often forgetting, though, to prioritize their actions on compliance and IP protection issues. Our starting point with Open Harmony is obviously being related to achieve a modern FOSS policy. We want to provide Open Harmony and the Open Source Technology Center with a DevOps infrastructure able to implement an open source continuous license compliance. Open source technology and open governance are the beating heart of Open Harmony. We truly believe that any project that is destined to live long must be built together in an open, accessible, and transparent way.
So, Our next two speakers are Michele Santuari and Andrea Avancini. They are both working at WordPhoenix on the NetEye solution, and they will show us today how they thought about bringing a NetEye to Kubernetes. It's a proposal they had, and they will show us to us. Please welcome to the stage.
So good morning, everyone, and thank you for the introduction. So my name is Andrea Avancini. As I said, I work in WordPhoenix. I'm a DevOps engineer in the R&D team of the business unit System Integration.
I am Michele Santuari, and I work in the same team of Andrea.
To start this presentation, I would like to start to an agile principle that we like very much, that drives us in our working days, and also drive us in this investigation that we conducted that is the topic of this presentation. So we will show you how, starting from our multi-tier application for infrastructure monitoring, we investigate how to bring this application to new microservice architecture like Kubernetes. And so I will ask Michele to explain how our solution multi-tier application works.
Thank you, Andrea. And our solution is called NetEye and provides the ability to monitor your IT infrastructure. You can imagine that as a system network administrator or a system administrator, I want to be notified on all the events that occurs in my infrastructure. So, for example, I have like a server which is has the disk almost full, so I need to know it. And moreover, for example, I need to see the pattern of my usage of RAM or CPU on my server, and this is called telemetry. So you collect performance metrics from your infrastructure. Sure, you need also to be able to send these events as an alarm to notify all the administrators so that they can avoid any accident. NetEye is much more than that. But we will focus on these three main aspects during this presentation. And in particular, I will present 4 main applications of NetEye, which are all open source and are fully integrated in NetEye. Let's start from the event management and alarms. We have Isinga, which provides us the ability to collect all these events from our infrastructure. And Isinga will store this configuration within a MySQL DB. We use MariaDB. And as you can see on the slide, we have this picture which shows you that there is an accident occurring on our infrastructure. The next topic is how we can collect the telemetry, so the performance metrics of our server. We use a time series database called Isinga, called InfluxDB, sorry, and we display all this data through Grafana dashboard. All these application needs a way to be configured all together, and this is how we use it to automate our configuration. This is a script which sequentially configures all our application to be able to talk together and to build up our NetEye. We deliver NetEye on-premise to our customer via a physical single server in which all the applications are running on top of it, and they provide the ability to monitor your own infrastructure. We have an alternative solution for bigger and high scalable infrastructure, which is based on 3 physical nodes. All the applications, as you can see here, are present on all the servers, but only one will be active at the same time. And this application needs the ability to have a storage among all the servers, a replicated storage, in which they will store their own application. Our infrastructure, so in this way, provides the ability to load balance among multiple applications. So only one application per time will be active on one physical server, and so that we are able to load balance among our 3 servers that we have seen here in these slides. Moreover, it's also fault tolerant, so in case you will lose a server or you have a problem on the server, one replica of the application will be promoted to active on the other server so that we are able to make a smooth transition without any accident occurring to our customer. This is provided by the Red Hat clustering technology, and so we have seen so far how NetEye is composed by this multi-tiered application and which are the challenges that we need to achieve to cover the future need of our customer.
So you can imagine that the target architecture for our future customer is an highly distributed infrastructure in which we need to deploy our solution. So what are the challenges that we need to tackle to bring our current solution to such architecture? So first of all, for example, let's start with this example. We have an instance of MariaDB that is running on our first server that is kind of overloaded in the sense that we are receiving a lot of read-write requests. So this means that as an architect, I would like to scale up my solution across my multiple servers in order to rebalance the load of at the application level. Currently, we miss this possibility in our current architecture. So we miss the possibility to do dynamic horizontal scaling. We are not able to scale up and down as requested by the load of the whole cluster. Another scenario is the one in which you can imagine we have an highly distributed architecture like the one shown in the picture, and we lose somehow the control on the single application. And you can imagine you can do misconfiguration error, and you can basically compromise the security of your server, because the isolation in an highly distributed architecture like this is somehow reduced with respect of a single server. So this means that we have somehow a reduced isolation in our current architecture. And so we need to also overcome this problem for the new architectures. And the third scenario is the one in which I have, I want to deploy a new application in my cluster. How can I do that? Basically, I need to implement somehow a custom configuration. But a custom configuration can have an impact on the existing configuration, on the existing application that are running in my cluster. Because at the moment, we don't have somehow a well-defined architectural API that gives me the possibility to configure my application in a free way, let's say. As you can imagine, if I need to implement some custom solution, I need to also to maintain in the long run this custom solution, which is somehow problematic. So just to summarize, we show how this multi-tiered application NetEye is done, how are the strengths of our current solution, what are the challenges that we need to face in the next iteration, in the next steps. So, Michele, how we try to solve these challenges with within our investigation?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Andrea, and we try to deliver somehow a working improvement by iteration. So we want to try to follow the beginning of our presentation, the main topic of our manifesto that we really like. So the idea is that we started from the first iteration in which we built a new Docker image which contains all our application all together within a single Docker image. We make it run on top of a physical server, and for sure this is not production ready. And also, it doesn't solve the problem that we are trying to solve. So we need a second iteration, and so that we can also gather additional feedback from our internal stakeholder and to understand how we can evolve our infrastructure. So the next step that we thought it was to be able to have at least some kind of fault tolerance. So we deploy on our physical server a Kubernetes cluster, which we are able to allocate and to keep running our big Docker image. And the idea here is that we make it run again our Docker image that we have. So it works again, but it's still we are not be able to deploy in production because we are missing a lot of features. So the third iteration was to be able to split this application into multiple, this big container, I would say, into multiple single services, so that we are able to run all our application spread around all our 3 physical servers thanks to the Kubernetes orchestration. So that we are able also to have a load balancing behavior among all our 3 physical servers, but we still have some problem regarding the fault tolerance, because, for example, you can imagine that MariaDB will fail or it needs to be reallocated, and you will lose all the data that you have because you don't have the so-called persistent storage. So in the first iteration, we deploy replicated storage, which provides the ability to our application to store safely their own data. We are still missing one of the key concepts, that the key challenge that Andrea presented before, and this is the so-called dynamic horizontal scaling. And in this case, we use the API of Kubernetes to be able to scale up our database, our MariaDB, to build up a cluster. So we have seen so far that we have covered the architectural API, which is given almost for free by Kubernetes. We have the isolation between the application thanks to our Docker image that isolate our single application. And we have the dynamic horizontal scalability thanks to the Kubernetes APIs. How we can now, so we have seen so far that we have presented the multi-tier application, the challenge, and here we are thinking, this is the final iteration, so are we done? So how we can know, Andrea, if this is, can be placed in production? And
so, Michele, let's try to put it into production.
Are you crazy, man? Are you sure?
I'm not crazy, I'm not crazy. Next iteration will be the following one. Basically, in Phoenix, we have a NetEye based on the Red Hat cluster technology that is collecting a lot of metrics, a lot of performance metrics from our customers. The idea is to put the new solution that we presented before, the NetEye based on the Kubernetes infrastructure, alongside this existing solution, and mirror all the data that we are collecting from the existing solution to the new one. So basically, we can see how this solution reacts with a real amount of data that is very, very large and huge. And this will be somehow a solution that goes towards some so-called a canary deployment solution. What is missing? So we have seen a lot of things that we have done. We have seen what are the next iteration that we have planned. What's missing? Well, basically, we started manipulating our big configuration script using the existing operators that Kubernetes gives us for free, like config maps and secrets. We still have to migrate some of those configurations in order to be independent from the previous big script that was shown by Michele. So this for sure will be also an improvement that we will want to conduct in the next weeks. And then, since I talked about customer, we have a lot of customer customization. So solution for specific customers needs to be customized. How can we, in this environment, customize the customer configuration? Well, the idea is to use Helm, that is an open source project, to help us in order to understand how to manage this configuration. So this concludes our presentation. Thanks everyone for the attention. We are here if you have questions, feedbacks, whatever. We also prepared a Telegram channel in order the audience can join us along the day, asking us questions and so on. Our emails are in the slides, so feel free to contact us. We are more than happy to answer. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michele and Andrea. We do have some questions.
Great.
The first question relates to NetEye, I think. How is it different from existing tools like Prometheus?
Please, Michele, go ahead.
Okay, so Prometheus, NetEye is more complex than Prometheus. It offers both a reactive way to monitor your network and also, I would say, a way to monitor directly your network, your infrastructure, in the way that it's also be able to execute some check on top of your infrastructure to see that your application are currently running. Prometheus is collecting information, it's not retrieving them from the infrastructure. So also NetEye provides also the ability to collect the information and also to retrieve them from the infrastructure. So it's a more complex complex way to unify your monitoring.
Okay, thank you. We would have another question, but if it's possible, could you maybe answer in the comment section that we have?
Yes,
and,
sure.
Thank you for your presentation. It was nice. We will wait for 5 minutes for the next presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, our next speaker is Martin Malverteiner. He's a software engineer and co-founder of About Bits. He will give us an overview how a centralized authentication server can help you with your projects. Martin, you're welcome.
Good morning, also from my side. Thank you, Patrick. My name is Martin Malverteiner. I'm co-founder of About Bits, a local software development agency. And today I'm going to talk about the protocol OAuth2 and OpenID and how this protocol can be used to connect all your services to a central authentication server. Let's go quickly through the agenda. The presentation is divided in two parts. A more theoretical part in the beginning about OAuth, OpenID, the protocol, key clock, an authentication server, an open source solution from Red Hat, and the question also whether you should use it or not, which is important. And then we would go into a bit more practical definition of how you could actually use a key clock installation in your infrastructure. So OAuth2 and OpenID is an industry standard protocol for authorization and authentication. OAuth2 defines different authorization flows, which supports web applications, desktop applications, mobile phones, living room devices, or microservices if they have to talk to each other within a network. OpenID is a layer on top of OAuth2, which adds the authentication part to the protocol, which means only from looking at OAuth2, the server would only know, okay, this is a valid token or it's not a valid token. But with OpenID, the server would also know who is requesting the resource. So it provides a little bit more information about the user or the server or the service in a microservice case. And Keycloak, on the other side, is an open source identity and access management solution which supports standard protocols such as OAuth2 and OpenID to connect the different services with this central authentication server. It also gives you a lot of different adapters in many languages. So you will get a JavaScript adapter for your web applications, but you also get a Java adapter for your, for example, Spring Boot application. And it's for you as a developer, it's only adding a dependency, configuring the adapter, and it's already working. So it's a very user-friendly approach. And the good thing about Keycloak that they work with standards as OAuth2 is that if they don't provide you an adapter, also other frameworks which support OAuth2 can be easily connected without further development efforts. Keycloak will then provide you a central service where you can manage all your users and permissions. And it even gives you, on top of that, different benefits such as two-factor authentication, or it even allows you to make it look like it's your corporate identity, so the user feels always at home in your services. But before you add another complexity to your infrastructure, such as Keycloak, you should ask yourself, well, do I really need an additional service? And in this case, I would ask you should ask yourself the question, how many services do I operate? If it's only 1 or 2 or 3, and the users are not shared between these services, then it probably doesn't make sense to add Keycloak. But if you operate a lot of services and the same users are using the same services, well, then it probably makes sense to think about a central authentication solution, because imagine you are a user and you would like to use 10 services. It's always your same username, but you would have to remember 10 different passwords, ideally, if you don't re-put always the same password, and you have to log in, log out over and over again. So in these cases, you should really start thinking about adding a central authentication server to your infrastructure. And now that we decided we actually want to go with something like this, we could now go into the practical part and show you how easily you can try it out. For Keycloak, to get a first glimpse of how it works, you can use the official Keycloak Docker image from Red Hat. And all you need is a database, a relational database. It can be, in this case, it's Postgres, but it can also be MySQL or any other SQL database. You give an admin user, a Keycloak admin user, admin password. That's, of course, you can change it. And you're good to go. Now you have tested it locally on your machine, and you feel like, well, this is something which could move us forward. I would like to know, I would like to put this into production. And then, of course, as this is a very central piece of your infrastructure, you should ask you will probably ask, well, I can run one instance, which is fine, but it's not good enough. Well, if this instance goes offline, my whole infrastructure is not available anymore. For that reason, Keycloak also supports a multi-node deployment, where you can easily fire up as many instances as you want, and they synchronize between each other, and your infrastructure is always available. Okay, so now we have Keycloak running, and probably the first thing you want to do is how can I add some users? How can I manage them? So the easiest way is to simply add them manually from the administration console of Keycloak. You provide a username, an email, password, and you're basically good to go. But if this manual process is not enough for you, you could also, with a simple click, support self-sign-up by users, so they can then just register themselves and they create an account in Keycloak. If you are a big organization and you might have already an Active Directory running in your company, and you would like that your employees don't have to create again another account for your services, you could just connect Keycloak with your Active Directory and take the users and credentials from there. Or maybe a bit fancier nowadays, sometimes you don't want users to register by themselves, but you say, okay, they already have accounts with Google or Facebook or any of these bigger companies, and then you could easily connect social logins with Keycloak. So now we have the users in our system, but they are totally equal. Everybody's equal in this case, and it's not always like this. Sometimes users have more rights than the others, and for that reason, Keycloak provides you with roles, and you can either create groups and assign roles to these groups, or you could even go more granular, add roles to specific users. And in the example here, let's assume the Open Data Hub of the Neue Tech Park, for example, provides public information about weather and traffic data, but somehow you also need to insert this data, and probably not everybody should be allowed to do that. And in this case, you could assign one user the role to edit the traffic data, but another user to just edit the weather data. If you now need more granular rights, for example, that one specific user can only put the traffic data or the weather data of a specific station, which we would call ACLs, then this kind of logic needs to be implemented at the service itself, at the Open Data Hub itself in this case. Wrong direction. Okay, and here we see the user interface, how you can actually add these services like the Open Data Hub to the Keycloak clients list. You can add different services like secure clients. This means a secret about the service can be stored somewhere where it's not accessible for the users, like a let's say a website which is server-side rendered, but you then can have insecure clients like a single-page application where everything is done in the client. So you would also have to, you cannot save this secret in the client. Or if you don't want to have users that actually log in with a username and password, but a server who should access some protected information, then you can also set up server-to-server authorization flows once you manage the clients. So here, a quick example. We have a central authentication server. We have the Open Data Hub, which is an API that provides public information, but also protected information. And now we would add some website, which provides you with a login, which would give you some access to protected data from the Open Data Hub. So you would have to log in before you access it. So you will be redirected to Keycloak. You provide your username, your password. The Keycloak will send you back an access token, which you can then use to request some protected information from the Open Data Hub. And the Open Data Hub by itself will validate the token with Keycloak. Another flow is, for example, when you have, let's say, some crawler who periodically automatically fetches the weather information from the Open Data Hub. And in that case, it's not a user that actually logs in with username and password, but it's a server or a service. And in this case, again, same flow, request the access token. With the token, go to the Open Data Hub server and retrieve the content. All these different flows are supported due to OAuth. So now we have everything set up, and you would like to make it really look like it's part of your corporate identity. And also in this case, Keycloak is completely extensible, and you can add your own email templates. So you can add the login registration forms in your style. Also, the complete admin area could be styled in your corporate identity, and also the user profile. On top of that, Keycloak allows you to do even much more stuff. For example, it allows you to hook into different events. So let's say somebody registered newly in your infrastructure, and you would get notified by an email so that some of the admins can check, is this a valid user, or even give different rights immediately right away. And for this reason, Keycloak allows you to hook into these events and fire whatever you would like to do. It could be an email to somebody, or it could call another service, whatever. So it's really extensible for your specific needs. Yeah, this would be it. So if there are questions.
Yeah, thank you, Martin. Okay. There is a question. The question is, why did you choose Keycloak? Are there any alternatives, or is there a specific reason because you choose Keycloak?
There are alternatives. It's true, Keycloak is maintained by Red Hat, so there's a very strong community and also a big company that has a lot of experience in open source projects behind it. So that's already giving you some sort of confidence that also the project will live for a longer time. And there are also competitors who would give you already the full service. For example, AWS Cognito, where you could just buy it and they host it for you and you manage the users there. But then you cannot customize it as much as you would like. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Thank you for your presentation. I think we are done. The next presentation will be in 5 minutes.
Thank you.
Welcome back. Our next speaker is Lip Babi. He's a software engineer and is doing his PhD at the University of Bolzano. He will tell us about data version control and how it can help to improve reproducibility in research. Lip, welcome to the stage.
Thanks a lot, Patrick, for the introduction. My name is Lip, and good afternoon, everyone, first of all. And today I'm going to talk about version controlling machine learning datasets and experiments. And also I'll talk about DVC, the tool we use for that in our research group. A few words about myself. I'm a PhD candidate at the University of Bolzano, and my area of research is machine learning for software engineering, and in particular at the moment we're working on code summarization. And another topic I'm interested in is the quality of research code and reproducibility of research, and that's why I'm talking here in front of you today. So, the reproducibility in machine learning is not particularly a new topic, but it's a pretty hot one and pretty important one. In research, for example, one can often find themselves in the following situation. For example, let's imagine there is a new research paper published in your area of research which reports the state-of-the-art results, and you want to reproduce these results. And for that, you go to the GitHub link provided by the author. And first of all, you find out that you need to download the data set from somewhere because it's too large to be hosted on GitHub. You download this data set, you unzip it, then you find out you need to run some pre-processing, so you run some script provided by the author, and only then you can run a script that trains your model. And you wait for a few hours, and then you see that the metrics that you get are different from the metrics reported by the author. And you try to understand what's going on, and you ask the author, and after two weeks or maybe 2 months, you discover what the problem was. The first problem was that the version of the library you used for text preprocessing was different from the one that the author used. And here we have the first lesson. In order to ensure reproducibility, you need to fix all the inputs to the pipeline: code, library versions, hyperparameters, random seeds, and so on. Also, you discover another problem. At some point, the author did some pre-processing to the data set. However, the data set was not version controlled. That's why this change lost and wasn't included in the pre-processing script. And here we have the second lesson. We need to fix every command that produces any output. Finally, you were able to reproduce the results, and you are collaborating with the author on improvement of the model, and you are training the model of the next version of the model, and even more models, and you want to train different models for different scenarios, and you end up having a bunch of models which need to be stored somewhere and which need to be managed and which you want to share with other people. And here comes the versioning problem. And this problem is solved easily with Git for, let's say, traditional software engineering, because code can easily be version controlled by Git. Also, you can do it for hyperparameters and metrics. However, every change in hyperparameters produces a new model, and these models can be pretty heavy. And the same goes for data sets. And Git, unfortunately, cannot handle such large files well. And we do need to store these models somewhere, because reproducing them all the time can be really expensive in terms of time and also money. So the ideal solution for others to be able to reproduce our research without having these reproducibility problems and these versioning problems is to run git clone, to clone our repository, check out the tag which corresponds to the model, to the model which is necessary to be reproduced, and then run some magic command like reproduce. Fortunately, if we put some effort into reproducibility, this command exists, and it can look like this, DVC repro. And I want to talk a bit more about DVC, what it is. So DVC is an open source command line tool, which has interface similar to Git, and also it is built upon Git and also stores its metadata in Git. And what it does, first of all, it stores the commands to be run to reproduce the pipeline, and also it stores and tracks changes to hashes of all artifacts used or produced by the pipeline. As a result, all the artifacts are reproducible, and a stage of the pipeline is run if and only if any of its inputs change. So this is the example of how the pipeline file could look like. And here you can see, that the user defines 3 stages along with the commands needed to run those stages. And to execute a stage, and to add it to the pipeline, the user ran DVC run command, to which it passed the actual comments, the name of the stage, and also the dependencies, the artifacts this stage depends on. Also, the outputs of this stage are needed to be specified, and here you can see metrics is a special kind of the output. And no cache means that this file won't be stored in DVC cache, but in Git, but we'll see it later. So when parsing the pipeline file, DVC builds a directed acyclic graph of stages and dependencies between them. And here, for example, you can see that the train stage depends on the preprocess stage because it uses the trainee data CSV file, which is produced by preprocess data stage. Similarly, you can see that the evaluate stage depends on the train stage and also on the preprocess data stage. And this can be nicely visualized with DVC DAG command like this. So if some of the files is modified, its hash sum changes, and DVC detects it, and it can be checked by running DVC status command. Then we would probably want to reproduce the whole pipeline. And for that, DVC repro can be run. We can see that the first stage, preprocess data stage, isn't rerun because none of its dependencies changed. But then the train stage does need to be rerun. And after this stage is run, the outputs are updated, and then it makes the evaluate stage dirty, and it triggers the running of the evaluate stage as well. Similarly to git diff, we can run DVC diff, to check what files were modified, even though these files might not be tracked by Git. And also, since we told DVC that metrics.json is a metric file, we can run DVC metrics diff command and nicely visualize the change in metrics. So, by default, DVC stores all the revisions of its outputs in DVC cache, and you can also tell DVC not to do that, which we've done with metrics.json file, because for small files it makes sense also to store them in Git. And we also have a dvc.log file which contains the metadata of DVC, and namely, it contains the hash sums of all the files in the DVC cache. And these hash sums are used to retrieve the files from the DVC cache. So in order to check out a revision, we first need to do git checkout, which will bring git tracked files and also the DVC log file to the workspace. And after that, we need to do DVC checkout, which will bring DVC tracked files into the workspace using the values from the checked out dvc.log file. So switching between experiments with DVC could look like this. And the second step could be even automated by using git post checkout hook. Also, we can collaborate with others by pushing changes from local DVC cache to the DVC remote. For that, we need to know to let DVC know the URL of our remote, and DVC can support different types of remote, which could even be your Google Drive or your SSH server. The flow is quite similar to the flow to the Git flow, but we just need to run DVC push before doing Git push. And similarly with pulling data, we do git pull first to pull git track changes and DVC metadata, and then do DVC pull. A few words on how we use DVC in our research group. Recently, we started a project called BOR, which stands for Big Old Heuristic Repository. And for those who are interested, it's a collaborative repository in which we gather heuristics for labeling different software engineering data sets with weak supervision. And our focus is on collaboration. That's why we make use of DVC and GitHub actions to facilitate this collaboration. We allow contributors not to rerun the whole pipeline locally, but rather submit a pull request with a single line change. And then the whole DVC pipeline will be rerun on a GitHub server automatically. And then the change in metrics will be reported as a GitHub comment. And if the metrics do improve, and we want to merge this pull request, before doing this, GitHub bot automatically commits all the DVC outputs and updated DVC hash sums automatically. On the other hand, when the change is committed to the master branch, we want our master branch always to be DVC clean. That's why we first run DVC pull to pull the changes from DVC remote to the GitHub server, and then run DVC status and fail the build if it's not clean, because we want our outputs to be up to date with the inputs in the same revision. And I anticipate the questions about alternatives to DVC. There are indeed great tools which have overlapping functionality, but we chose DVC because it's open source. It has interface. It has simple and intuitive interface similar to Git. It doesn't require any additional services, databases, APIs. We can be flexible with remote storage, and it has transparent design and human-readable metadata. To conclude, I want to say that the tool itself doesn't really matter too much. The most important is the approach we take to solve the problem. And software engineering for machine learning shares a lot with software engineering. That's why these approaches can be taken from software engineering and brought to software engineering for machine learning by adapting them a little bit. So these are tracking every change with version control system, including large machine learning datasets and models, using build tools, and also including machine learning specific steps to the build pipeline, and using continuous integration and adapting it specifically for machine learning projects. Thank you. And looking forward to questions.
Thank you, Philip. We have some questions, yes. I take it with me because there are quite some questions.
Sure.
So the first question is a kind of, do you plan to upstream or contact Git to maybe support bigger files in the future?
If we contact Git to support bigger files in the future? That's a great question. Actually, first maybe I should say that it's not our tool. We're just using this tool. Okay. But indeed, Git have their own version of Git, which supports big files. It's called Git LFS. But it has some, I would say, some problems, let's say. And we found that using DVC is better. And also there is a limit with Git LFS. There is a limit on amount of files you can store on the servers and so on. So you cannot be flexible with the servers you choose for storing the data and so on.
Okay, thank you. There's another long question.
Sure.
How do you make sure that the specific paper contains the results of an exact code and related data version? What I mean is traceability between final released papers and final released and then maybe changed repositories?
Sure, yeah, that's a great question, and that's what I really would really want the researchers to do. Automatically generate some part of the LaTeX file, for example, with the experiments from the source code, and then not to manually copy the results, to the paper from the output file. Yeah, I guess this could be done, but yeah, you need to set up this pipeline. And yeah, it's not always easy, and yeah, researchers unfortunately don't always have time for this.
Okay, so one more question. We still have a little bit of time. Are researchers willing to share the code with other, maybe competing research groups?
Yeah.
Have you had problems getting proper data?
Well, I would say recently there's been a trend of sharing the research, of making the research open source. But of course, there are cases where researchers don't want to share the code and data. Yeah, but for those who are willing to share, DVC is a great tool.
Thank you, Lee, for a nice presentation. We have now 5 minutes, and then we have the last presentation. So our next speaker is Simon Ebnicher. He's a network technician working for Telmecom, and he will show us today how you can create your Linux VXLAN gateway using FFR. Simon, are you online? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Perfect.
Can you hear me well?
Yeah, we can hear you too. The stage is yours.
Oh, thank you very much. Okay, like he already said, thank you very much. My name is Simon. I work for Telmecom in the Network Operations Center. And yeah, today I'm going to show you our short journey to a VXLAN gateway, or in our case, a concentrator with GNU/Linux. At the beginning, I want to talk shortly about what VXLAN really is. It is an RFC standard, and it was mainly conceived to replace limitations of VLANs in the data centers. For example, with VLAN, one big limitation is you have only 4,094 VLAN IDs possible. That is, so to speak, the maximum number of networks you can have. But with VXLAN, you can have over 16 millions. Very importantly, VXLAN is not a layer 2 technology. It is more like a VPN over an existing layer 3 network, and VXLAN packets are sent via UDP to a specific port, and as I said, it's more like a VPN. Okay, the next thing also, VXLAN only specifies a data plane, no control plane and nothing else. It's just how packets are encapsulated and decapsulated. No control stuff whatsoever. So why do we need this concentrator? Well, we are planning to have quite an extensive VXLAN network, and for that we need also some sort of management access to various devices on various locations. And our idea was to use Debian GNU/Linux to interconnect those two different worlds. On this small diagram, you see on the left our VXLAN network. We use two interfaces to connect to it. These are layer 3 interfaces, so it's really no problem. It's for redundancy purposes, and they connect to a VXLAN switch. And the dotted lines on the left represent also the various different VXLAN networks. On the right, we have our management network, in this case, just a single port. And in the middle, we use Debian Linux to bridge these two worlds together. Okay. As I already said, we have many VXLANs and would like to bridge them together to a single management interface. Why did we choose Linux? Well, first, the cost. We looked into some specific hardware boxes that could do this for us, but since the scenario we need here is quite complex and not so easy to do in a ASIC, these boxes cost quite a lot of money, and we don't need this extremely high bandwidth throughput anyway, so we decided it could be a viable option to do all this in software. And of course, GNU/Linux can do anything. So, as I already mentioned, VXLAN only specifies the data plane, so we have no control plane whatsoever. But fortunately, there is something we can use, and we also use this on the VXLAN network on the whole, on the switches. It's multi-protocol BGP with eVPN. This is also an RFC standard, and so we have the good thing that all we do here is standardized, and maybe we are so vendor dependent. But how do we get that strange multi-protocol BGP, eVPN stuff into Linux? We did quite a while some research and then found out that one routing software or service, and in Linux this is called a daemon, can do this. It's called FRR. We need OSPF to connect to our underlay, And then over that, we need multi-protocol BGP on that underlay network to talk to our route reflectors for EVPN. And also we need some software that can talk to the Linux kernel, because we create the virtual VXLAN interfaces in the kernel. Yes, the Linux kernel can do that natively, but we somehow need to bring out that information into the BGP multi-protocol EVPN side of things, so that all the whole system can talk to each other. Why do we need a control plane? Just shortly, just imagine you have this VXLAN like a VPN. You have two sites connected, and on the left and on the right, you have multiple MAC addresses that need to talk directly to each other, but VXLAN in itself, as I said, is only the data plane and does not transport that information, what's on the left side, what's on the right side, and for that you need the control plane, which in our case is EVPN. Okay, now a short overview on how to configure such a thing. On the left, you see the basic network configuration. The bottom two interfaces, which I called here underlay 1 and 2, are just the connection into the underlay network, and they talk via OSPF to the whole network and distribute their routes and receive the routes. Then we also need a loopback interface, which is here on it's the second block on the left. This IP address on the loopback interfaces is also advertised via OSPF to the whole underlay network, and it is used to be the endpoint IP address for the VXLAN tunnels, and also the source address for this. On the right, we have the configuration of FRR, and this is really the whole configuration. It's no more than this. The first two blocks are the OSPF configuration of the interfaces underlay 1 and 2. I omitted the second interface here. It's literally the same as the first. And then also the loopback interface, so that the loopback IP address gets also advertised. Then we define a router ID easily. And the last block here is everything there is needed to configure the EVPN, the multi-protocol BGP EVPN stuff. We define our two route reflectors, and then the second nested block is the layer 2 VPN EVPN configuration. Again, we define the route reflectors there, and we have one command, the advertise all VNI, that is needed so that FRR talks to the Linux kernel, looks what VXLAN IDs are there on the interfaces, and then advertises them over multi-protocol BGP. Then this is just an aid for the next slide. Okay, the configuration of the VXLAN interfaces in the kernel is described more or less here. First, we create the bridge, and then we create the management interface. If you already forgot, the management interface is the one here on the right. This is just a normal layer 2 interfaces and is enslaved directly onto the bridge. On the left, we have the VXLAN interfaces, and those are configured here. On the bottom, the first line is just the creation of the VXLAN interface with its VNI, which is the VXLAN network identifier, just an ID, so they can be distinguished. The local address, which is the source address in the packet, and the destination port. You note here that we don't have a destination IP address for the tunnel. That is not needed. This is all done in multi-protocol BGP by FRR, which can distribute and receive the EVPN information and knows all endpoints that are connected also to this VXLAN 100. Again, we enslave this interface to the bridge. We enable the bridge isolation. I will come back to this in a minute. And in the end, we bring up the interface. You may have noticed that we disable here IPv6. This is just done because we don't want the link local addresses on all those interfaces. This should be a pure bridge. This is not to say that we don't like IPv6. Like my colleague Jakob yesterday already told you, IPv6 is very important. It's here. Internet providers already give it to their customers. Please use it. It's very important, and as he said, it's the future of our internet. We need it as soon as possible, deployed everywhere. Now let me come back to this bridge isolated on. In our scenario, we only want that a VXLAN can talk to the management interface and not to other VXLAN that would also be bridged here. Yeah, as I said, this is just to isolate the VXLAN with each other. So, and fortunately it works. It's quite nice. It's not that difficult to set up once you have found out all the quirks. And I hope this was a quite interesting presentation. And now, if there are any questions, please post them.
Thank you for your presentation. We do also have a question. It's a question that you might have already answered. So I will still give the answer, the question to you. If there's no contour plane for VXLAN and UDP packet transmission, how can you be sure to have a reliable connection?
Well, as with everything on the internet, you don't. The underlay in this case must be monitored. So we, of course, are sure that the connection is there. And also the overlay, the VXLAN tunnels must be monitored in some ways. But as the whole internet, it's a service where you cannot 100% rely on delivery of packets. But since this is our internal network, I don't see any problems there. It's like any link. Somewhere always a packet could always be lost. But we take, at least in our company, we take many steps to have redundancies. And that is also the beauty of a layer 3 underlay. It's much easier to deploy redundancies. You literally can just add more links. You have then automatically more bandwidth. You have equal cost multipath routing at your disposal. You don't have to worry about spanning tree protocol and all its horrible quirks. Many things are easier if you have a layer 3 underlay.
Thank you. In the meantime, we have another question. Is there a reason you're not using BSD, or do you just prefer Linux?
Well, we have a lot of experience with Linux, especially with Debian Linux, and I must confess I have never looked at the BSD side at this point. With Linux there is much documentation, but as I said, I never really looked into BSD myself. And there, at least my point of view is that the update cycle is not that quick, so bugs, I'm not sure, but I have sometimes the feeling that bugs are not that quickly fixed. But of course, BSD would be still a much more stable system than Debian is, but yeah, someone could look into it.
Thank you, Simon, then. Nice presentation.
Thank you very much for your time.
See you.
Bye.
So this is it for this year. We want to say thank you to all sponsors, to all speakers who took the time to come here virtually or also physically. And we would like to remind you that next year we'll have the SFScon hopefully here at Neutech Park in Bolzano. It will be on the 12th of November. Thank you for joining us and see you next year.